Hi guys, it's Megan with Vigilante Vibes, and I'm here with another character breakdown, and we are continuing the theme of Pride Month, and I was very excited to talk about this character, Marvel's first openly gay character, John Paul Bobier? I've never seen it said out loud before, so Bobier? Northstar. He is Northstar. He was created by Chris Claremont and John Byrne, and he first appeared in X-Men number 120 in April of 1979 as a member of the Canadian superhero team Alpha Flight, along with his twin sister, Jean-Marie Bobier. I don't know. Aurora. Her name is Aurora. He didn't really get a personality beyond the French-Canadian guy until Alpha Flight got their own book in 1983. Which was initially both written and drawn by Byrne. Byrne has always been very upfront that when he began fleshing out the personalities of the members of the Alpha Flight, he wanted one of them to be gay. As early as 1988, after Byrne had left Marvel and created Maggie Sawyer for DC, and before Comics Code Authority lifted the rule against queer characters. Byrne flatly told the magazine Amazing Heroes, that's the name of the magazine, "I created the first gay superhero," meaning Northstar. While his sexual orientation had been hinted at prior to this issue, Alpha Flight number 106 marked the definitive reveal. Northstar went on to have the first gay wedding in Marvel Comics in Astonishing X-Men Volume 3, number 51 in 2012, further solidifying his place in comic history. Now, that's all well and good, but that doesn't do you much good if you don't know who Northstar is. Northstar, he's a former Olympic and pro ski champ who also happens to be a mutant, signs up in Canadian's superhero team Alpha Flight and starts going by the name Northstar. He was going by Jean Paul, which is very, very French-Canadian. While there, he reconnects with his long-lost twin sister Aurora, and the two of them spend some time fighting the good fight. Eventually, Northstar moves on to the X-Men, where he takes charge of a group of young mutants he calls Alpha Squadron, a nod to his Alpha Flight days. That's a very, very short version of him. So, let's talk a little bit more about this iconic character. Not long after they're born in Canada, what is happening? Twins John Paul and Jean-Marie Bobier lose their parents in a car crash, which is very sad. Very sad. Anyways, their mom's cousins, the Martins, take them in, and they can't afford to raise both kids. So Jean-Marie is sent off to a Catholic girls' school, and the twins grow up not knowing each other. But I feel like the Catholic girls' school would be expensive too. I just want to point out, I don't know anything about Catholic girls' schools, but yeah, it's just moving on. When the Martins pass away, 6-year-old John Paul ends up in the foster care system. So it was all for nothing. He still ended up in the system. As a teenager, John Paul gets caught stealing by Raymond Belmondi. Or Belmond. I can't imagine his name is pronounced Raymond Belmond. Right? Oh my god, I don't know. Who surprisingly doesn't turn him in. Instead, he becomes a mentor and a father figure. Raymond helps John Paul deal with the fact that he's a mutant and also gay. He introduces him to skiing, which John Paul falls in love with. He also helps him learn to control his super speed. Later, John Paul joins a circus and becomes an impressive trapeze artist. He finally feels he's found a family, but he's still angry and lost, and he ends up joining the radical separatist group Front de Libération du Québec. I'm so impressed with myself right now. As a courier for one of its more extreme cells, he gets involved in a bombing plot, but after saving innocent people from the blast, he realizes he doesn't agree with their violent ways and cuts ties with the groups altogether. John Paul gets back into skiing, secretly using his powers to become the world-famous and wealthy Olympic gold medalist. I would too, I'm not going to lie to you. Keep it 100, I would 100% do that. Around this time, Canada's Department H is putting together a superhuman team called Alpha Flight. The team's leader, James Hudson, aka Vindicator, later Guardian, sees a photo of John Paul and notices he looks a lot like one of their new recruits, Aurora. Turns out they're twins. When they reunite and touch, they create a blinding flash of light, shocking everyone. Jean-Paul is thrilled to find out he has a sister and joins Alpha Flight as Northstar, mostly to be with her, even though he's not super into the whole superhero gig. As a part of Alpha Flight, the twins team up with heroes like Shaman, Snowbird, Sasquatch, and their leader Guardian. They go on tons of wild missions, including a few run-ins with the X-Men. As part of Alpha Flight, the twins team up with heroes like Shaman, Snowbird, Sasquatch, and their leader Guardian. They go on tons of wild missions, including a few run-ins with the X-Men. But Alpha Flight eventually disbands, and that's when he joins the X-Men and then becomes a more teaching role for the young mutants of Alpha Squadron. So, I want to get into... he is such an iconic character, but his story is very sad. His coming out story is very, very sad. So I will get into it. Just a trigger warning for baby death. I don't really know how to go about that without saying it like that. I'm so sorry. But that is your trigger warning, so be careful. In Alpha Flight number 106, he finds a baby in a dumpster. Jean-Paul promptly adopts the baby and names her Joanne Beaubier, only to learn that she is HIV positive. The media picks up the story, sparking an outpouring of sympathy for the baby and infuriating an obscure retired superhero named Major Maple Leaf, which is so Canadian, created specifically for this issue, who burst through the wall of the hospital like the Kool-Aid Man to unalive this little baby. Jean-Paul defends her with his life, and as they smash their way across the city, Maple Leaf screams that his son also died of AIDS, but because he was gay, no one cared. Sadly, Joanna does not survive. The experience pushes Jean-Paul to go public about being gay, hoping his openness will spark more honest conversations around HIV awareness and prevention. Do not presume to lecture me on the hardships homosexuals must bear. No one knows them better than I, Jean-Paul says as he's swinging his fists. For while I am not inclined to discuss my sexuality with people for whom it is none of their business, I am gay. That ends that quote. Later, he starts dating Kyle. It's not always been easy balancing superhero duties in a relationship, but after some ups and downs, they make it work and eventually tie the knot. Let's talk about Northstar's powers. Northstar can move and fly at superhuman speed. He basically taps into the energy in his body at a molecular level, converting it into a forward motion. In theory, he could get close to 99% the speed of light, but in reality, things like breathing and the insane amount of friction would seriously mess him up before he got anywhere near that. To protect himself, he can tweak his molecules in a way that makes his skin tougher, so he can handle speeds up to at least a Mach 10 without getting hurt by wind or turbulence. Thanks to a temporary power boost from the Children of the Vault, his speed and durability got even better for a while. When he's carrying someone who's not protected, though, he keeps the speed at around 60 miles per hour, so they're still able to breathe. He's trained himself to breathe just fine at much higher speeds. Northstar can also speed up parts of his body independently, like his fists, so he can land super fast punches in combat. On top of that, he can manipulate his molecules to create a super bright burst of light, kind of like a human lighthouse. That used to only happen when he and his sister Aurora touched, but at times they've been able to do it solo. It seems like things have gone back to the original setup when they need each other to pull it off. Outside the powers, Jean-Paul, like I said, he's a top-tier skier, a skilled trapeze artist from his circus days, and fluent in both French and English. One of Alpha Flight's big missions was to bring back Wolverine, aka Logan, after he left the Canadian government to join the X-Men. They ambushed the X-Men in the Calgary, managed to capture Wolverine, but he escaped almost right away. After that, the government basically gave up on getting him back, and eventually Department H shut down, causing Alpha Flight to disband. Later on, while visiting his sister Aurora, Northstar discovered that her strict religious upbringing caused her to develop a split personality, one side bold and carefree, and the other side shy and quiet. When James Hudson, aka Guardian, brought Alpha Flight back, now running independently without government backing, Northstar rejoined to keep an eye on her. Her ongoing personality and struggles pushed him to seek professional help, but he couldn't go too far without risking their secret identities. During a visit with his old mentor, Belmont, Northstar witnessed Belmont being unalived by deadly Ernest, who had kidnapped Aurora. With the help of Nemesis and Ernest's daughter, he rescued Aurora, but she was furious when she found out John Paul had assumed she'd seduced Ernest to save herself. Their argument ended up with her cutting ties completely, and John Paul left Alpha Flight. Aurora, wanting to be even more different than her brother, had Sasquatch modify her powers. When she later found out about Northstar's terrorist past, she threatened to expose him. Despite all that, they eventually patched things up after Sasquatch's apparent death and fought the Hulk together in Vancouver. During the fight, they realized that touching each other now canceled out their powers, an unintended result of Aurora's changes. The same battle convinced the Canadian government to reinstate Alpha Flight, and Northstar rejoined. He goes back and forth a lot, and it's whatever. His past with a terrorist group came back to haunt him when a vigilante named Scourge started hunting former members, but Scourge was eventually taken down and the Prime Minister pardoned John Paul. Soon after, Northstar saved a woman from a suicide attempt during a ski event, exposing his powers in the process. This led to accusations that he had cheated in past competitions, ending any chance of going back to professional sports. But he did cheat, so accusations? Not long after that, Northstar fell seriously ill, thanks in part to the villain Pestilence. While Alpha Flight searching for a cure, Loki showed up with a wild story that the twins were actually Asgardian light elves, and John Paul was dying because he lacked access to his light. Aurora used her powers to heal him, but then got captured and dragged into the realm of the Dark Elves. John Paul, unaware of her fate, went to Asgard. Eventually, the gods scolded Loki for his lies, and he tried to make amends by returning Aurora to Earth. Alpha Flight later rescued John Paul, and in a battle against the sorcerer Liam, he helped restore Aurora's powers, now with the added ability for both siblings to generate light on their own. After Alpha Flight disbanded again, a bigoted businessman named Carl Carriage framed Northstar for murder. The Canadian government sent Weapon Prime after him, and he was also targeted by the assassin Arcade. With the help from former teammate Heather Hudson, who goes by Vindicator now, cleared his name. John Paul later teamed up with his old Alpha Flight crew to expose the shady new version of Department H and to take down a revived Weapon X. He wrote an autobiography called Born Normal, and while promoting it at a book signing in Philly, Jean Grey recruited him for a temporary X-Men mission to stop Magneto. Back in Canada, John Paul became a successful businessman, but when Professor X invited him to teach at the Xavier Institute, he agreed, especially after witnessing a young mutant's tragic death during a mission. This is when he started teaching the Alpha Squadron, which has been brought up a few times. Sorry. Later, Northstar was killed by a brainwashed Wolverine as part of a Hydra plot, then brought back to life, also brainwashed, and used to lead Hydra forces. He ended up seriously injuring Nick Fury while under mind control and went on a violent rampage targeting the anti-mutant bigots. Wolverine eventually stopped him, and Northstar was taken into S.H.I.E.L.D. custody. Held in a virtual reality prison where time passed faster, Jean Paul resisted deprogramming. He was freed by the Children of the Vault, who used him and a now brainwashed Aurora in a mission to kill Sabretooth. The twins were captured by the X-Men, who tried to heal their fractured minds using a VR therapy loop in their life stories. Though the session was interrupted, it helped. The twins later helped the X-Men during a Skrull invasion. John Paul also started a new company, Team Northstar Extreme Snow Sports, with his boyfriend Kyle. Eventually, Wolverine convinced him to rejoin the X-Men. He helped stop Norman Osborn's Dark X-Men and rescued Magic from Limbo. Despite the ongoing strain between hero work and his relationship, John Paul and Kyle finally worked things out and got hitched. After the events of the Chaos War, Northstar reunited with a resurrected Alpha Flight, but chose not to rejoin them full time. Instead, he moved back to Canada with Kyle. During the age of X-Men reality, where everyone was a mutant and romantic relationships were outlawed, Northstar became part of Department X, a kind of mutant police force. Haunted by dreams of his real life with Kyle, he eventually joined a rebellion alongside Jubilee, Iceman, and others. When Psylocke restored everyone's memories, Northstar remembered his past and rekindled his friendship with Iceman. Back in the real world, Northstar relocated to Krakoa, the new sovereign mutant nation. There, he and Aurora joined Cyclops-led scouting missions and continued their role in building a new future for mankind. So that is the iconic character of Northstar. John Paul is a great character. A lot of depth that went into making his character. As always, I have comic book recommendations I think you should check out. Starting with Uncanny X-Men number 120, Alpha Flight 106, Astonishing X-Men Volume 3 number 51, Astonishing X-Men 48 through 68, X Factor Volume 4, Amazing X-Men Volume 2, and Uncanny X-Men number 410, and so on from there. So, I hope you like this character breakdown. With that being said, have a marvelous day.